What's up, tiny boat builders? So as promised, today I'm going to show you how I built the transom for my boat. I actually built an extended one. I'll try to show you how I built it, and then I'll actually show you the install process as I'm doing it here. So stick around and hopefully you'll enjoy this and get something out of it. Okay, so we are looking at the transom of my 10-foot boat. There's the boards that I built for it, and I'll explain those in a minute. You can see I did get some more framing done. All of my subframe is done, and I have a rod locker framed in there. I did decide to go ahead and do that. I think it'll be large enough to store at least 4 or 5 rods anyway. So let me kind of explain why I had to go this route. So you can see, as I said in the last video, I think it was, it's a 10-foot lightweight aluminum Apache JON boat, and there's no kind of plate or any kind of number stamped in it or anything. So I researched online, and the best I could figure, it looks like this boat was originally rated for a 3-horsepower motor. I did not have a motor. I did some trading, and I got that Evinrude 9.9 horsepower. So I know, number one, that the transom, even if it had been strong, was not enough to support it, because the original board was a piece of 3/4 inch, and it only came down not even halfway down the transom to about right here. And it was secured, of course, with the 4 bolts holding in the rear handles. And it was rotten anyway, so I tore it out, and I wanted a full length transom to go all the way to the floor and to cover the entire front side of it. So, and I also knew I would have to beef it up a little bit anyway to be able to support that. And another thing that I ran into, this transom, okay, had to get my tape measure pulled out here. So you can see my transom is just under 12 inches tall. Now, my engine is 17 inches from the cavitation plate. Let's see if I can get over here and show you that. So for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, see if I can demonstrate this for you. All right, so this piece here, the large flat piece just above the propeller, that's your cavitation plate. And from there to where the motor sits on the transom should be the length of your shaft. And it's a little bit hard to do at this angle to show you on video, but this one is 17.5 inches almost. So it's a standard short shaft engine. So the cavitation plate should be pretty much even with the bottom of the transom at the lowest part of the boat. So I had about 5 inches or so that I needed to build this up. So let me kind of explain what I did to show you here. So I've got this piece, first of all, that I cut. And by the way, I did end up making this about 1 inch shorter. That way it's up off of the floor of the boat about 1 inch. That way, just in the rare event that any water did stand in the boat, even though I've sealed this really good, I didn't want to take any extra chances of it trying to absorb any water. So I cut this to fit. Let me lift it up here and show you. All right, so, and you can see it's got a lip. Let me pull this back out. The way my transom is built, there's a lip right here. So of course I wanted the top part of that solid. So I fit this board up in it just like that. All right, now that gives me a 1 inch transom. That's a 3/4 inch. It's actually oak plywood that I had laying around. So then by the time this metal wraps over, that's a 1 inch transom. Number one, that's not as thick as I wanted it for that size engine. And number two, I still had the problem that I needed to raise it up to about right in here. So let me show you the other piece that I built. You can see it right there. What I did is I used another piece of 3/4 inch. me get this stood up. And that one is one solid piece. What I did is I actually laid that one down on top of it and traced it to this point here at my corner. And then I measured up 5 more inches and cut it off there. And then I just simply, from this point at the corner of my transom, I just made a 45-degree angle. So if you can see that on both sides, I just made a 45-degree angle, and that's nothing more than just for looks, really. I just didn't want it sticking straight up, and I thought if it was sticking straight up, it would be such a sharp corner on each side that I would end up either scratching myself or ripping clothes or something. So so that, let me get it set in place. That's going to sit just like that. And to make it thick enough, and there's, you can see just a little bit there, but when I get this pulled in with the bolts, that will actually be flush, or it should be, the way I've got it measured. So I've got the piece of 3/4 that's full length there, and of course that back piece will be raised up when I put that in. They'll both be the same height. And then to make it thick enough for what I wanted, it's a true 2-inch transom. I've got another piece of 3/4 on the outside, all that's oak, and then I've got a piece of 1/2-inch pine in the middle. So it's 2 pieces of 3/4 and 1 piece of 1/2-inch. I put exterior wood glue between them, clamped them together, and then of course gave that time to dry, sanded all my edges and all that. Now to seal these on both pieces, I used Kiehl's oil-based stain and sealer. I used 2 coats on each, and then I went around and put 2 coats of Rust-Oleum over everything. And the only difference is when I did the Rust-Oleum, when I did 2 coats on each side, I also did a coat on the edge. So for every coat here on this side, there's a coat here, and for every coat on this side, there's a coat on the edges. So the edges of both pieces actually have 4 coats on them. So that should have that sealed up nice. And what I'm actually going to do, since this side, my gas tank, excuse me, the gas tank, of course, is going to sit here, and you know, lifting it in and out to take it to the gas station, if I do that, or to take it out for storage, or whatever I decide to do, it is a portable tank. I know that this is going to be susceptible to getting scratched. So what I think I'm actually going to do once I get it installed, because I'm going to have some bolts here, is go over it with another coat of the Rust-Oleum on the front, the top edge, and the back side of this board. So anyway, there that is. Then my original factory handles, you can see right here, they go in those holes. And what I'm going to do is drill a 1/4-inch hole through each of those, all the way through both boards. In between the metal and that first board, I'm going to put a bead of the marine sealant around each hole. And then in between the inside board and this outside board, I'm going to use liquid nails on it. So then when I put this in, run my carriage bolts through the inside, tighten them up. That's going to be 4 of those, sandwiching them together. And then I'll also use my spreaders until this thing dries, and run a spreader from this floor brace to the bottom of the transom on each side. And that will keep it squeezed together until that liquid nails dries. So I'm going to shut this off and go ahead and do all that, and then once I get that done, I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so I said I was going to shut the video off, but I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to mount it right here and try to insert a time-lapse video to show you the process, so you can kind of slow it down or pause it if you need to, and that'll be easier than me trying to explain the whole thing. So here goes. Okay, so there is the almost finished product. I hope that time-lapse video, maybe you were able to see what I was doing. So I put the inside board in. You saw I had to put a piece of wood and a little piece of aluminum under that just to hold it up in place so that it didn't fall. And then I drilled my holes through where those bolts are. Then I took that board out, vacuumed the wood shavings, put the sealant around the holes, and put that board back in place. Then I put the liquid nails between the two, sit this one in place, and of course it just rests on the transom. Kind of held it in place there, drilled the holes on through this board, and then at that point I took some sealant and put around each hole as I went. These are stainless steel carriage bolts and washers and nuts, so I won't have to worry about rusting. But I wanted to make sure with the sealant that the inside of this wood didn't get wet. So if any moisture would try to get around that screw, of course the inside of that's not sealed. So that was the reason for my sealant here. And then I also put sealant around the bolt before I put the handle on. And then these were, of course that's a 2-inch transom, these were 3-inch screws. I used my impact, tightened them up to where the head just pulled into the wood some. And then what I did was actually took after I got them all put in, I took the angle grinder and I cut the bolt off almost flush with the nut so that it wouldn't be sticking out, and then took a hammer and hit the end of it, and that way it wouldn't try to back off. So now I've got a good solid handle bolted all the way through. I don't have to worry about those rusting, and that should be a good solid transom. And then you can see I put the spreaders in here going from my floor support to the bottom of my transom, so it's not only being squeezed together with these bolts, I've also got it being pushed at the bottom until that liquid nails cures. So I'm not worried about this sealant being on here, around here, because that is paintable once it's dry. And like I said at the first of the video, I'm actually going to do another coat of the Rust-Oleum. So I think what I'll do is actually take just some rattle can primer and prime the heads of the carriage bolts so that the paint sticks to it really good, and then I will put one more coat of the Rust-Oleum over all of it. So anyway, there it is. I have a 2-inch thick transom that is bolted with 4 bolts through there. Oh, and also once I get my deck, like I said, I got started on it today, but I've got another piece to run across the top here. Let me see if I can find a scrap piece to demonstrate it. Okay, so I'll have this will of course be as close to the edge as I can get it, but this is the front of my rear deck, and I'll have a support on both sides. That's actually my rod locker there, but from there back and from here back all the way to the transom, and I'll have a piece of angle across here that this will be riveted to. And when I'm going to have a hatch lid here, when that lowers down, the angle will actually stop it. But I'm going to put a brace from the bottom to here on both sides, and then it'll have these at the top on both sides. So I'm going to have 4 points of contact that is actually the entire structure of the boat is going to be supporting that transom. So once all that's in place, there's no way that that's not going to be strong enough for a 9.9 horsepower motor. So anyway, there it is, and you can see from the back view that is 5 inches from right here to right here. That's going to give me 17 inches of transom height, which will put my cavitation plate about a 1/2 inch below the bottom of the boat, which is almost perfect. So that turned out exactly how I was hoping for. I'm really pleased with that. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and if you have any more suggestions, please let me know. Drop it in the comments, and I'd be happy to acknowledge any of them. And because this is my first boat, this is my first boat build, and I'm just kind of winging it as I go, watching a lot of other videos. Tiny Boat Nation, give a couple shout outs here. Michael Lopez that runs Tiny Boat Nation, I've gotten so much from him, and also Fire Ant Fishing, his YouTube videos. If you've not seen those, check them out. Check out the Tiny Boat Nation Facebook page, and you're going to learn a lot. And I'm just trying to pull from all that and incorporate it into mine. So anyway, there it is. There's my 5-inch extended 2-inch transom that runs the full length of the boat.